Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me? Sound off in the comments if you can hear me. What was it?
I didn't put in the article, but I just put it in.
This thing on? Alright, we got someone saying we can hear me. Hello, everybody. Okay. Alright. We got technical director over there on the couch checking to make sure everything is going well. Hi, how you guys doing? The latency is really bad. Huh? Maybe. I'm just trying to figure out if I can fix the latency. Anyway, guys, there's like a 10-second delay on my end, so I'm just gonna. So, right now, we are drawing a portrait, and I am answering your questions. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask them. I will have someone read your questions.
Since you've started studying psychology, what are some of the most misconceptions about this field that you realize are quite common?
Oh, God. Well, for one thing, I think most misconceptions about psychology start with the assumption that psychology and psychological research is meant to help everyday people be better at social situations, which that's not what psychological research is for, right? Like, we study abnormal psychology with, various disorders to help aid treatment. We study social psychology to better understand the human mind. Like, there's science for science sake of like trying to understand how the human mind works, and there is science for like a medical application, which would be the clinical side of psychological research. And so, like, I think a lot of misconceptions about psychology come from there, of this assumption that, like, this study was designed to help me in the dating sphere or whatever. It's like, it's not what it's for. And people will, there are a bunch of grifters who will skim through the psychological literature, find flashy looking abstracts or paper titles, and then make even flashier looking titles for their articles or their videos, when really that's not what the study was about anyway. So, like, I think that's probably where like misconceptions about psychology just come from, is that it's meant for something entirely different than what it's actually for. What's another question?
How do you get a mind place or a mountain palace, and how to improve memory for revision?
Mind palaces are pretty simple. I did a video about that. Like, it's just a fancy way of storing memories. And so basically what you need to do is you need to find a physical location. You need to pick points in that location. So if we were to pick this location, let's say the mirror is number 1, the draftsman table is number 2, the paper is number 3, the microphone is number 4, the computer is number 5, and the light is number 6. And so what I would do is I would walk through this location, stopping at each of those points multiple times, like all the way through, and then I can close my eyes and remember walking through that location, stopping at those points. And at those points, then I would imagine something that would remind me of the thing that I'm trying to remember, right? So you think of a crazy image that cues the memory of the thing that you're trying to remember. That's the basics of how it works. What's another one?
What are the books people that have changed your life?
What are the books, films, people? I don't have this book with me right now because I loaned it, but Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl is a very important book for me. I read that right before I started my undergrad. That was really important to me. Here's another one. The Mismeasure of Man. This book is one of the most influential works that I have read personally. It is about various ways in which people have tried to categorize people and measure intelligence, and how it all has been based in the same hierarchical structure, and they make the same measurement mistakes to justify certain actions towards other people and to perpetuate just bullshit. And it's a very good book. I highly recommend you read it. Mismeasure of Man by Stephen Jay Gould. One of the best books I have ever read. Films. Can't really think of a film that has impacted me super recently. The Hunt for Red October is a really good movie. I love that movie. People, I'd obviously say my mom. Probably been the most influential for the longest time. So, all right, next question.
How do you see your early YouTube self? How do you feel you changed?
Okay, how do I see my early YouTube self, and how do I feel like I've changed? Well, it's also surprisingly difficult, guys, to draw a portrait and answer all your questions at the same time. I thought this was going to be easier. But how do I see myself? Early YouTube career. So, you gotta understand, I started this channel when I was 14 years old. So, I had a very different self-conception, idea of the world. I don't give myself any flack for that. I was a literal child, and people grow and people change. But, it's definitely not something that I don't want to be doing the same thing now. I think I have changed for the better. I think my content has gotten a lot better, both in terms of production, which obviously I've been working in the production industry for 7 years now. The production has gotten better, but also just my content, my way of speaking, my camera presence. There's the obvious things of back when I was a kid, I would change my voice to better portray myself as someone who is intelligent and older and wiser and yada yada yada, because I was a kid. And nowadays, I don't really do that because I'm a grown-ass man who's perfectly fine with the way that his voice sounds. So, there are obvious stuff like that, but on a deeper level, I think I'm more knowledgeable, I'm better at research, and I'm just interested in a different type of topic now than I was when I was 14, which, people do that. People change their interests. Next.
Should we expect
For the most part, yes. I am intending on doing one last video, and that'll be the next video. Will be on deduction, observation, and memory. And I'm also going to explain how the new style of content that I'm doing, like doing these more research-based video essays and stuff like that, how that the process of doing that employs the same skills, right? So I'm basically taking the same set of skills, and instead of applying it to people, I'm applying it to research. You know, that's all that's really changing. We're just talking about a different topic, but we're now applying the skills. So, like, that's why I try in my video essays to, like, show you the process of researching, because it is kind of like you're a detective traveling down the rabbit hole trying to figure something out. Like, that's what it feels like when you search through the literature or do research on anything, really. But I am intending on, because, like, I never finished that one series on the deduction cliff notes. Never finished that, so I'm kind of just going to do one video that brings it all together. But if you want more of this kind of content after that, Ben Cardle, I've mentioned him plenty of times. I've done 2 interviews with him. He's a phenomenal mentalist. He has a YouTube channel. He does a podcast. If you want to learn about deduction, don't come to me. Go to him. He knows way more what he's talking about than I do. But yeah, I mean, like, the biggest thing is, like, I'm just not interested in really talking about that topic anymore. It's just not something I want to make videos on, because I made videos on it for a while, and I kind of ran out of things to talk about. Like, we can talk about logic, observation, and memory only so many times. And then, okay, like, we could get down more into the minutia of it and be like, okay, what specific things mean what? Okay, like, what does this particular stain pattern mean? It's like, yeah, we can get into those minutia, but I don't think this is the correct format for that. I don't think that me explaining, like, a set of tells to you and what they generally mean is going to serve you as well as just sheer experience of trying to perform deductions and figuring things out. So yeah, long story short, yes, you can expect very little deduction-related content from me in the future.
Can anyone hypnotize another person without knowing he's going hypnotized?
I honestly have no idea. I have not done a lot of formal research on hypnosis. From what I understand, there is some debate in the literature about the efficacy and usability and feasibility of hypnosis, but also, like, it's one of those things where, like, psychologists will still use it. It is a documented phenomenon. Generally speaking, though, unless you have, like, some sort of a willing participant, it's really hard to hypnotize someone. Like, even someone like Darren Brown, who does these hypnotism shows, right? Like, it looks like he's hypnotizing them without their consent, but at the same time, they are attending a show that is about hypnotism, and they are volunteering to go up on stage. So, like, there is an unspoken consent about this is a performance, and so oftentimes people in those sorts of settings, like the setting of hypnotism, really, really matters, because when you're at a hypnotism show, you're actually more suggestible to being hypnotized because you want to go along with it. Because you don't want the show to be bad. Who wants the show that they just paid 80 quid for to be bad?
What happened to the deduction core community? It seems like it's dying. I mean, it was always something a bit underground and unpopular, but now it seems like it's vanishing.
I mean, you gotta remember, like, why it started in the beginning. Like, I mean, as far as the history of the deduction community, I think I am an authority on this one, because I think my channel was the first YouTube channel on the topic. And you gotta remember what was coming out in those days. It was Sherlock. BBC Sherlock, like, and you also had Elementary coming out at the same time, and like there was a big like resurgence of interest in Sherlock Holmes and the methods of deduction, and like this has always been an underground thing for since the stories like came out. There have been like little Sherlock-based societies that really love the stories and try and employ the same methods in their day-to-day life. Like this is a thing that's been going on for over 100 years. But in terms of the online community, I think it was really predicated upon like the popularity of that show, and then like the show had a drop off afterwards, and we talked about this in the Sherlock video that I did recently. And the show also just like ended, so like interest kind of waned. And I think like, okay, so you had two types of people who kind of went to the deduction community. You had the kinds of people who were like really focused on training and getting better and consuming as much knowledge as possible, and but really going out and applying it as much as humanly possible, right? And then you had other people who were more the consumers of the content around it, but didn't really know how or didn't want to apply it as much. It's kind of like, I mean, like with any kind of skill, you have people who they want to learn something, but they kind of procrastinate actually applying the things that they're trying to learn by consuming more and more information about what it is that they're learning. So, it's like if I wanted to learn how to play guitar, I could justify watching 40 videos on how to play, like intro to playing guitar over the course of a week, and be like, yeah, I'm learning how to play guitar, where I haven't picked up a guitar yet. And so, like, I think that was a big portion of the deduction community. I mean, look at my following. It's 120,000 subscribers. And, like, even back in the day, with the deduction, like, how-to deduction videos, those were only getting, like, 5,000 views at most. So, like, a big portion of the audience here, from the start, has always been not super interested in staying on the wagon. So I think that just kind of piled up, and the people who were really interested in it and kept going with it, just as the community started dying, they just kept using it in their daily lives. And
Say it louder for the people in the back.
Say it louder for the people in the back. Can you not hear me? Can you not hear me? Is that literally a thing that are they saying it's too quiet? Dude, we've got, like, so many people saying they're bored. Dude, go fuck yourselves. Just go.
They also said, why do you live in a basement?
Why do I live in a basement? I live in a second-story apartment.
Okay. Are you and Logan from Observe still friends? Miss the Mind Readers podcast.
Yeah, we're still friends. Mind Reader died out because we just didn't have enough time to keep it going. And then, like, over the years, like, kind of the same thing with this is, like, I don't really want to do a podcast on this topic either. So, like, neither of us really wanted to reignite it once we kind of got to the place where we could. But yeah, no, he and I are still friends. I don't foresee any collaborations between us anytime soon. Like, Logan's super busy, I'm super busy. Content is kind of going in different directions for me, so yeah.
What are the types of videos and subject matters you're interested in making and presenting?
So nowadays, I'm really interested in I like the video essay format. I love doing a deep dive into research on a topic, whatever it is. Like, I mean, psychology is obviously what I went to school for. It's what I know the most about. Like, I'm very comfortable going through the psychological literature and getting an answer to a topic.
Oh, the deductionist who said say it louder than people in the back, he said, no, I just love what you're saying. I hear you fine.
Oh, that's Ben. That's Ben. Oh, okay. Good to see Ben here. See, this is the guy. Okay, the deductionist in the comments right there, Ben Cardle. He's the guy you guys should go to if you want more deduction content. He's the king. Anyway, what was I saying? Psychology. Yes. Okay. So the reason why I wanted to do like video essays is like I enjoy going through the literature. And like psychology is obviously what I focus on in school, and it's what I'm most comfortable researching. But I'm also like just interested in researching anything. Like I minored in anthropology. I want to get a master's degree in sociology. But I also want to explore beyond STEM topics or social science topics. You know, I also want to do like art analysis and media critique and stuff like that. Like I've been working in the multimedia industry for 7 years. My mother is a painter and an art historian and a professor. Like, you know, I have a lot of interest, and I think the video essay format allows for the exploration of a lot of different topics because people are more interested in learning something new with a particular person and like their presentation style. So like that's kind of what I'm trying to develop is a presentation style that an audience would love to watch any type of topic on from me. But yeah, do we got any?
Remember that video where you were trying to walk around obstacles without looking and tried using your memory and other senses? How did that experiment end up?
So that's actually still something that like I would tell people who were being like, okay, how do I make better how do I be more observant? How do I make better observations? Yada yada yada. I'd be like, okay, well, close your eyes, try walking around, and then open them again. You're gonna realize that, like after you open your eyes, that you weren't really observant before you closed them, and so it's just kind of like a thing that kind of forces you to be more observant. Your mind naturally is like, hey, I don't like being blind. I don't like running into things. If the lights are going to go out at random points, maybe we should pay more attention. It's just kind of a psychological, like, subconscious thing of, like, what would happen if your sense of sight was cut off for a little bit? Would you have the memory to be able to traverse that environment? And that just makes people more observant, you know? So that's something that like I've done for a good long while, and other people have done for a good long while. Good results from that. It just helps. Everything I said in that video still stand by today.
Would you upload more introductions, more videos on introductions? Because the videos are short and people with less time can watch them. Whereas the reductionist usually uploads a podcast explaining the whole thing, they get too long.
Well, here's like the thing is like I do understand the not having a lot of time. I understand not having a lot of time. Like I've got 2 jobs. I do this. Like I'm also trying to maintain somewhat of a social life. Like I understand not having a lot of time. But you can work around your schedule, and you can watch things in chunks. That's why I divide my video essays into chapters, so that you can watch it at your own pace. I don't know if Ben does the same thing, but like, it's also just one of those things of like, you know, sometimes you don't have the time to kick back your feet and watch the whole thing. But that doesn't necessarily mean shorter content is going to give you as good of information in less time. Like, this is just one of those things where time has to be committed to it. Because I did used to make shorter videos, and that's one of the things I wasn't happy about. Is like, I didn't have the time to explain the concept in as thorough words as I wanted to. as was required by the topic. So like honestly, I feel like some of my content does a disservice to people wanting to learn, because like if you make things sound simpler than they actually are, it's not gonna pan out, you know, the way that you want it to. So it's just one of those things where, you know, we all have to make time for things that we want to do. I guess this is just one of them.
Is mind really an illusion just made by brain that is there at least some body language tips to escape from cheating? How
Next question. Not gonna answer questions that are like 14 questions in one comment that have no through line between the questions being asked. If you're just throwing a word salad at me, I'm not gonna answer it.
Okay. When it comes to observation, memory, and cognition processes, will you do videos regarding the psychology of deduction thinking or deduction of thinking, or would you rather focus on other topics?
So, like, I mean, this is kind of the thing that I'm saying is that. Okay, let me give you a breakdown of like how I view deduction, right? Deduction to me is the scientific method applied to everyday situations. That's all it is. That's what Doyle said it was. That's what the Sherlock Holmes stories were based off of, is if a detective approaches a crime scene like a scientist would a scientific problem, what would happen, right? So like deduction is just the scientific method applied to real world scenarios. And here's the thing about the scientific method: it's kind of hard to employ correctly, because just like humans, the scientific method is a method that is kind of goes against our natural thought processes. Is thinking slower, thinking more critically, trying to falsify rather than prove a hypothesis, all these things. It's like that's what you're doing. And so just by exploring scientific studies or scientific inquiries or just talking about psychology, like these things are intrinsically related. What you learn from a video essay on a scientific paper and what you learn from a video essay about deduction, these are transferable skills. It is the thought process. That's actually one of the things when I was in undergrad and I was reading all these papers and stuff for my research papers and things that I had to do. I would be reading like how the experiment was conducted and things like that. I'm like, oh, this is the same process. There is no different. The only difference is that you can control the conditions and you have more effective tools of measurement. That's the difference here, but it's the same method. You make an observation, you ask questions about it, you develop a hypothesis based off of that question, and then you look for evidence to either confirm or deny, preferably to try and falsify your hypothesis, and then you see what it remains afterwards. It is just a hypothesis testing system. That's all it is, and it's based on observation. You make observations to develop questions and gather evidence. That's all it is. It's really not a different process.
You're up to date. What would you like to talk
Oh,
about?
we're up to date? Damn, I'm good. Does that make sense to everybody? Also, it is really hard to draw and do this at the same time. This is turning out like shit.
What is a topic that you really want to get into that you haven't yet?
I got so many. I'm gonna keep that a surprise.
Is mind an illusion made by brain?
Oh, is mind an illusion made by brain? It's like, okay, I think you're putting the cart before the horse for this question a little bit. It's like, okay, do you have a conscious experience? Yes. That is the one thing that you know for sure, is that whatever this is, you are experiencing it. your eyeballs and your ears, and like you are having a conscious experience, and you are having reactions and thoughts to that conscious experience. That's the one thing you know for sure about anything. Is the mind therefore an illusion created by the brain? It's like, what do you mean by mind? What do you mean by illusion? That, and also to separate mind from brain, it's like, okay, well, obviously the mind is a function of the brain. It's like conscious experience is a function of the brain. If you remove the neocortex from the brain, you cease to have conscious experiences, but you can still maintain homeostasis. You can still eat, drink, breathe, sleep, all those things, but you don't perceive anything consciously anymore, because we know that when you remove portions of the neocortex from sensory portions, like if you remove something from the occipital lobe, that portion of your vision that corresponds from your occipital lobe to your retina, even though your retina is still intact, you will not be able to see that portion of information being captured by the retina, because the corresponding portion of your occipital lobe in the cortex is gone. So like if you so is the no no the mind is not an illusion created by the brain. The mind is a function of the brain. It's a different framing of the question.
How would you use the profession of a person?
I mean, I've talked at length about this on the podcast, on various videos. Ben has talked about it. Like, I mean, this is one of those questions where, like, I get why it gets asked a lot, because it is hard to do. But at the end of the day, it just takes practice. It's like I can't say the same 7 things over and over and over again for the rest of my life. Like, you gotta look at their build. You gotta look at their hands. You gotta look at the clothes that they wear, the expensive things. Like, these are like things that I've talked about before. You have to look at the whole person in context, based off of estimated income, muscular structure, calluses, tan lines, yada 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 yada, etc. etc. You can narrow down the possibilities further and further and further. I'd say, like, if you're having trouble doing that, the best way to get a better beat on what tells correspond to what professions is just be more observant when you see people at work, right? If you see construction workers, take a good look at what those construction workers do, how they move, like the effects on their hands, on their body. Like, look at people who are currently working and see if you can work that back to where you could figure it out if they weren't in uniform. If you're struggling with trying to figure out a person's profession, like, there's only so many times I can say the same things over and over again, but that is the best, like, advice I could give to you to learn how to do that, and then apply all the things that I've said in the past, and Ben has said in the past, and Logan has said in the past.
I see psychological health as an important topic, something that you'll talk about, or would you rather not?
Psychological health? Yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm more than happy to talk about that. Like, clinical psychology was not my area of interest or specialty when I was an undergrad. I kind of took as few clinical classes as I possibly could. But it is still something that is very important. Like, I at one point I joined a student group that was about mental health advocacy, and like there's definitely a lot of misconceptions about various types of disorders, the effects of various medications. Like, there's a lot of conceptions on the clinical side of psychology, and as not a clinical psychologist, I don't want to talk about that as an authority, but I do want to dispel myths about that sort of thing, while also pointing people in the direction of people who know way better than I do. But yeah, no, mental health is a very important topic to talk about. Is one that, like, obviously people need to be more comfortable with therapy, but also, like, there's just a cascade of cultural things at play currently today that affects people's mental health and how they are going about treating it, and there is a lot to talk about. It is a very important topic. So yes, we will be touching on that topic at some point in the future.
How does the probabilistic nature of quantum mechanics allow free will to actually be free?
I am not a physicist. I'm not a quantum physicist. You are asking a question.
But you could have been a human.
I could have been a chemist. That is my big joke. I did want to be a chemist when I was a kid. This is a question. Okay. Read me the question again. How does quantum mechanics,
How does
the probabilistic nature of quantum mechanics, account for free will?
allow free will
Ah.
to actually be free?
Okay, it's like, okay, well, you could ask a physicist, you'll get one question. You can ask a neuropsychologist, you'll get a different question, or different answers. Sorry. Okay, when we're talking about, in my very basic understanding of this area of physics, like, we're talking about subatomic particles when we're talking about the probabilistic nature of quantum mechanics, right? It's like, okay, how far down the quantum rabbit hole do you think is relevant to how neurons function? And this is a legitimate question. This is not rhetorical. I don't know the answer to this. But that would be a good answer, or that would be a good question to ask and answer before we get to this question. It's like, what is the relationship between quantum mechanics and the brain? Beyond the basic, like, well, everything is quantum mechanics when you look down far enough, sort of thing. Like, functionally speaking, do we know how much this affects the function of neurons? And if so, what does that mean? It's like, the whole, like, is free will real or not question, it's one that is very, I don't know, annoying? It's like, first of all, we don't really have a good way to test it, because we don't really have a good way to operationalize it, because we are not built to conceive of something like that on that level. So when we just have conversations about it, but when we just have conversations about it, we're just talking out of our asses. We don't have a way to test this. We don't have a way to test if free will is or is not real. So it's just opinions. Opinions informed from various different schools of thought and whatnot that may or may not directly relate to the topic. But it's like, why are we like, rule of thumb, treat people like they have free will. People like that better. That's don't treat people like, because this is the spiral people will go down. It's like, nobody has free will because I know that makes me better than everybody else. That's a bad rabbit hole when you start dehumanizing people in terms of their free will and their consciousness, because, like, how does that affect consent? How does that affect your respect of people? It's like just a fucking bad topic, especially when we don't have a way to test it. So,
How to stay more observant?
how to stay more observant? You gotta just practice being more observant.
Body language of cheaters.
Variable.
I did some research, and many body language research doesn't seem to have a lot of peer-to-peer. Do you disregard it because of it?
It
Or
doesn't
do
have-
you consider it valid?
Doesn't have a lot of peer-to-peer.
Mm-hmm.
I assume you mean peer review. But yeah, like, this is a topic that I wanted to talk about at length at a later date. But suffice it to say, like, in the psychological literature, there are a number of different theories about how facial expressions and gestures work and what they are meant to communicate. And I think that there is evidence across the board for these different theories, and I think we're still in the forefront of figuring out what theory is the most efficacious. I have my opinions on it, but, like, it's just a topic that I would like to address more fully at a later date. But suffice it to say, like, I'm not publicly talking about body language these days because of, like, the research that I've done, and I'm like, well, I agree that there is a disagreement in the literature about this topic. Do we have any more?
Not at the moment.
Oh, okay. I can actually draw. Oh my god, that's so much better. Oh shit. That's way out of proportion. It's like I know I have a long face, but it's not that long. It's so much better.
What should your subscribers expect from going forward?
You should expect high quality explorations of a variety of topics, mostly focusing on the social sciences. Beyond that, like, I don't know. Like, I want to get to the point where I can talk about any topic that interests me that I've done a lot of research on and people will watch. You know, that's what you can look forward to if you guys stick around. If you enjoy my content presentation style. But if you're just here for one topic, like, that's perfectly fine. Like, we all have creators like that, where we're not necessarily interested in the personality, we're interested in what they were bringing to the table, and when they stop bringing that to the table, we peace out. And, like, that's fine. If that's you right now with me, that's perfectly fine. I no hard feelings here.
Can you please help me to at least identify who is not trustworthy?
Okay, I don't want to answer that question with a blanket statement because I don't want to say, like, how do you tell who is and who isn't trustworthy? It's like, who is to say? This is dependent upon the person, the situation, and their relationship to you. Like, this is their, like, a trustworthy and untrustworthy individual can look the same in different contexts. I can't in good conscience tell people that, like, this means that someone's untrustworthy and this means that someone is, because it would just be bullshit. I would just be talking out of my ass, and I'd be giving you something that might be really bad advice that could lead to really bad decision making. Like, that's something I want to do. So, like, I don't know, just, you have to be aware of your environment. You have to pay attention to, okay, well, when it comes to, like, life or death situations, like, you will usually get some sort of, like, subconscious cue to, things just don't seem right, I've got a bad feeling about this. Trust that bad feeling. Trust that bad feeling. Other than that, you have to learn to ask the right questions. You have to learn to here's how you can parse out who is and isn't trustworthy. You have to be more assertive of a person, because if you ask people more assertive questions from the get-go, and you make it clear that you are not to have your leg pulled, then people who are just trying to pull your leg will leave.
Best book to read like Sherlock other than Spy, The Lie, and
Well, Ben's book, The Monographs, is a much better read than either of those, in my opinion. I don't even think I've read the first one.
Deducing over here is your lesser female and very religious. Deducing over here is your lesser female and very religious.
Yes to the first, no to the second. Is my lesser? Is that what they said?
Actually, that's actually one.
Okay, first of all, you're not my lesser. You're welcome.
Well, do you want to explain your
The cross? Is that what you're asking about? You didn't see it in here?
yes?
Oh, yeah, the cross. This is actually a wonderful piece that my mom got from Ghent when she went there recently. And it's a wonderful crucifix. Like, I'm not Catholic, but it's a beautiful piece. So. Where are we at? Sick. How long have we been on stream?
No, it's 10:46. So, I mean, 46 minutes.
Nice. This is turning out like absolute garbage.
It's not. I think your nose is too high.
Yeah. Focus on shapes, not details. You are not at details yet.
Will the name of the channel change?
And that remains to be determined. And I would not spoil such things here.
I want to know what the person would do if it did happen.
Yeah, why don't I ask you people questions? I'm just kidding. Please keep asking questions. That's why we're here.
Does reading Sherlock's novel help improve the rate of thinking?
I mean, yeah, no, I mean, observational learning is very important, obviously. Like, one, reading the Sherlock Holmes stories is just better than watching any of the adaptations because, like, Doyle actually took time to make this make sense. And he knew what he was talking about because he was a practitioner. So, like, yeah, reading the stories is going to be helpful in that regard because you're going to see, like, how this sort of thing be applied in a scenario. But at the same time, it's not going to be as helpful now as it would have been 100 years ago because, like, shit's changed and things are way different today. So, like, the specifics of Holmes's things that he would deduce, not really super relevant to today anymore. Got any more? Sick.
I think there's an analysis to be made of Holmes and Stoicism.
Holmes and
Something you'd be interested in.
Holmes and what?
You should read it.
At the bottom.
Yes.
Stoicism. I mean, Stoic philosophy is like, I've read a little bit of Stoic philosophy. I got like halfway through Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. I was bored, and then I was like really glad that it wasn't me because my mother also read it because one of her friends who's a philosophy professor recommended it, and she was also bored. So like, I don't know. I am not super well read in philosophy. I'm not going to pretend like I am. But like, Stoicism is not my particularly favorite school. Not that I have an issue with it, but it's just not my thing. Also, is it the same person asking all these questions? For the most part. Iago Herrera. Apologies if that I butchered that.
Virtual world said hi.
Hello.
I said hi to Ben. Ben said hi to Board. Aditya said hi. And Kit Ray said hello on the new sweater of yours.
Oh. Okay, I was actually curious of this. How many of you are new to the channel, and how many of you have been here for a while? Just show of hands, I guess.
I had to like you're up to date.
Sick.
It's looking good.
Thanks. Nose needs to be lower.
Yeah, I was hoping too.
Swear I can do this, everybody. It's just multitasking.
Are you interested in artificial intelligence?
Am I interested in artificial intelligence? That's a loaded question. I mean, like I am watching it with bated breath. I actually work at a research institution that started in AI. Like that was like their main focus. Now they do more robotics and human performance stuff, but I work in multimedia there. So like I know AI researchers, and I think the research side of AI is one thing, but then there's the corporate side of AI. It's like I'm not worried about AI. I'm worried about how people are going to use it. And that's just a thing people have been worried about for the longest time. It's like the argument that you usually get is like, or the counter argument that you usually get rather, is like, well, we've had things be phased out before. Like, how is this any different? It's like, okay, well, first of all, it is so great a difference of degree that it is a difference in category. Like, we are now attempting to phase out cognitive and artistic labor, not just manual labor. These are two different things, right? And the impact of them is different. It's like, why do we want to create an AI that can generate art? Art is one of the things that humans do because we like doing it. Because it is a way to engage with the world and our experiences, and to be able to communicate that. That's why we do art. The reason why we're developing AI to generate art is not to create art, it's to create designs and logos, but that's the only way that most artists, myself included, can be employed. Like, I'm a photographer, I'm a graphic designer. Don't worry, I don't get paid to do this. Like, charcoal portraiture, I'm not getting paid to do that. But I am a really good graphic designer and a photographer and a video editor, and like, you know, that's not my art, but it is something that uses the same skills as the art that I can create. And uses the same skills as the art I create takes to make. And like, the average person isn't going to be able to tell the difference, you know? So like, we're trying to replace the way that artists keep themselves employed. It's just, I'm not a big fan of that. Not a big. And also, like, the other side of that is like, the other side to that counter argument of like, well, we've done this before and it turned out fine. It's like, yeah, we've done it before, but do you really think it turned out fine? The world is still suffering. Like, there are still people suffering today from deindustrialization. There are still people, like, we still feel the ramifications of the Industrial Revolution and then the deindustrialization that happened afterwards. Like, when you uproot a bunch of people and their livelihoods, that can last generations. Like, let's not pretend like that just went away. So, like, yeah.
Johnny Joseph and virtual worlds have been here since the beginning. And the other says, I've been here almost since you started.
Well, it's good to know that we've got some loyal people from the beginning here.
Was observing and deducing now is was observing
reducing now is less important than the time of writing of the first novels?
Sorry, one more time.
Was observing and reducing now is less important than the time of writing of the first novels?
Okay. I don't think so. I think the skill is just as applicable today as it was back then. I think that just the things you need to look for are just going to be different. But I think I mean, I think as a general rule we use that thought process more today. Because like I was saying, it is about applying the scientific method to everyday situations. And so we just employ the scientific method for more things more of the time now. And that's just... This is just a bad angle to be viewing this at. It's better. So yeah, I think it's still relevant today. It's just harder to see it as something distinct in and of itself because I think we use the process more. It's just a matter of like what you're applying it to. It's like, okay, if you want to read people, like it's never gonna not be helpful.
That was from Relative Relativity, and they say that they're new to the channel.
Yeah? They have a YouTube channel?
New to your channel.
Oh, they're new to my channel. Oh, okay. Well, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the content.
Tips on getting better at mindfulness meditation.
Start small. Start small. I wouldn't actually recommend starting with a timer. I would say just sit down and do mindfulness meditation until you feel like you're done. And just keep doing that. Don't hold yourself to some arbitrary time metric. Like, you want to be able to get to the point where you can do it for 10 minutes. And yes, 10 minutes feels like an eternity when you're doing mindfulness meditation, but don't hold yourself to an arbitrary time metric at first. Just do as much as you feel like you want to do or can do, you know? So, like, that might be 30 seconds. That's okay. Do that for a few days. It'll get easier. Start small. Which is pretty much my advice for everything. Start small. Just keep doing it.
Since we move the phone, your face is kind of covering your...
Charcoal.
Is the light room better to focus?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe in some circumstances. I feel like this is one of those things that depends on the mood that you're in. I've not looked into any studies that would say one way or the other on that particular topic. So, no idea. I'm just going to say that. No idea. Because to me that sounds like sensory deprivation, which tends to have negative cognitive effects. So, I don't know. Oh, now that I've changed positions, now my subject is different. Okay, do we have any more?
Can the says I'm not doing it. And then do you think what do you think is the underlying principle running the society?
If you're asking for something conspiratorial, there's none to be had here. The underlying what was the operative word? The underlying what feature? Principle. Underpinning our society. Underlying our society. Running society.
And we say thank you to virtual.
Thank you, virtual world. I would say that the concept of private property. That is my answer to that question.
Will you explore the topic of cognitive load in regards to stimulus that technology gives us and how it affects our analysis and or variation?
I have thought about tackling that topic, particularly in relation to ADHD research. Um, the short answer is yes. I will talk about that at some point. I want to do more research on it before I like fully dive, because like I have my own hypotheses about this, like, but I want to see if like I want to test them out and see like has anyone done research on this? What does the research say? That sort of thing. So, yeah, I will be talking about that at some point. We got another one?
How much time should you spend on making your deductions when they're beginning? How much time should one spend on making deductions when they're beginning? I mean, like, it gets accurate results within minimum time.
Like the minimum time it would take you to get an accurate result if you're just starting out?
I guess.
It depends on how obvious the tells are. It really does. Sometimes the data just rolls in and you just see what you're looking for immediately. And sometimes that's just luck, not skill. But generally, I'd say rule of thumb, takes a few minutes to get a decent read on a person when you're just starting out.
Are there any benefits of doing meditative yoga?
Could be. I honestly don't know the research on it, but I would assume so. Because yoga is just really good for your body, makes you, which, you know, the endorphin rush and all the signaling effects of skeletal muscle on your brain. Like, exercise is good for your brain, exercise is good for you. Yoga involving exercise, it's going to have some beneficial cognitive effects, and then meditation, we already understand that various forms of meditation are beneficial to cognition, so like I would assume that the same would apply here, but I don't have any like hard data on that. I'm sure someone has done a study on it though.
What are your thoughts on fasting?
Don't know that name, if that answers the question.
I don't care video.
I'm assuming this is some YouTube drama stuff. I don't know who this person is. I have not kept apprised on these sorts of things.
Well, how to read faster and memorize more things for long periods of time?
These two things are actually going to be in conflict with each other. You can do one, and it's really hard to do the other. Yes, you can read faster, but reading faster means less reading comprehension, which means less retention, which means less memory. If you want to remember something you read better, you got to read it slower, you got to read it multiple times, you got to be interacting with the material, you have to be taking notes. If you want to read faster, take a book and a pencil, and you put your pencil, the non-writing side, on the line you're reading, and you move that pencil, and your eye will follow the pencil, and that'll make you read faster. Less reading comprehension, but you'll do it faster.
What are your thoughts on moral licensing?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with that particular terminology. If you would mind re-asking your question.
Panic Art says, I love your hair.
Thank you, I'm growing it out. Do you guys want to see it in a man bun? You should have just seen the dirty look she just gave me.
Camilla says, I love watching people draw.
I'm glad you're having fun. I'm struggling, if you couldn't tell. This is...
Which scientific research are you most interested in and will have most impact on in the future?
Well, if you had asked me like last week, I would have been like, well, split brain research, because like that's kind of how I work, is that I have a research question and I go into that and I like dive balls deep for a month or two, and then I just will just obsess over that particular topic for a really long time. And like that's what I did with this last video, is I just researched. I found 22 papers and read through them to write that script for that video. Please go watch it if you haven't seen it. Please, I'm begging you. It's the best thing I've ever made. Anyway, so like, but yeah, after it was over, I was like, huh, so glad I don't have to think about split brain research anymore. I'm so excited to research something different. In terms of like a branch of science, like I'm actually, like my undergraduate work was in psychology and anthropology, but I'm actually interested in going into sociology for my master's degree. So like I'm actually intending on doing a little pivot.
So Samuel asked, what are your thoughts on anti-Catholics, and when you said it's a take on not taking religion seriously.
I'm not familiar with that particular thinker and the things that they have to say, so I can't like.
Well, I think they're saying that it's a take on not taking religion seriously.
I don't really feel like answering that question. I don't want to stir that pot. Sorry. If it were just you and I, like I'd give you an answer, but like, you know, it's just, these are touchy topics.
Do you believe that aliens exist? If so, do you think they're intelligent or dumb like us?
God, are you guys not picking up on the whole loaded question thing that I keep... Like, the framing of your question is important, but I'll answer it. Do I think that there are aliens? Maybe. I think that there's a big factor that we are not necessarily taking into account when we ask the question of like, are we alone in the universe? It's like, okay, the universe has been around a long time. People, not so much. So, like, it's a factor of time that we're missing, not just space. It's like if we're looking for a civilization, species like ours, you know, who's to say that they are around yet or are still around? You know? It's like, do aliens exist? I mean, like, I'm sure has been life on other planets at some point. I don't know if it's still there or if it has yet to be there. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that's a big factor. Also, the are they dumb like us? It's like, okay, well, how do we measure intelligence? It's like that's a big question. It's like we are sapient, self-aware creatures who are aware that not only experience the world around us, but we are aware of the fact that we experience that, and we can therefore experience ourselves. That's kind of like our working definition of like, yeah, that one's like us, you know, sapiens. And so far, we're pretty much the only things that we know of that do that. And so, like, intelligence is a really tricky thing to measure, and like we pretend like we have a good metric for it with IQ, but like if you actually look into IQ, it's a theoretical model that we never actually tested the theory on. So like it's a very reliable test in that it is accurate, or rather precise. It will measure the same thing you intend. It will measure the same thing multiple times with very little variation. However, we don't know how valid of a metric it is because we never actually tested to see if it was measuring general intelligence, because general intelligence is still a theoretical concept that not even theoretical, hypothetical concept that we're not sure of. Because what IQ does is it measures specialized cognitive functions that have their own pools of cognitive resources, and then we take the average of that and we divide that by 100, and there you go, you got IQ. right? So like the idea is that if you stress out the specific cognitive functions enough, you will eventually force your brain to pull onto that general intelligence pool of cognitive resources that all of the specialized cognitive functions use. However, like we don't know if that's the case. Like, as far as I've read, and I've done a good amount of research on this, I have not come across a study that has confirmed that. And also, it's like if you take a look at someone's the individual scores of their IQ test, like on the different cognitive functions, what you'll find is some people are just good at some things and not others. That's just how people are. Like, you know what I mean? Intelligence is variable. Intelligence is cultural, even. Because, like, for example, in our society, we talk about, like, we often equate mathematical intelligence with general intelligence. And that is a cultural thing. Because certain societies don't have as much mathematical structure as ours. Like, Aboriginal Australians, as from what I understand and remember, I believe that Aboriginal Australians didn't have a number concept beyond the number 3. So it was like you had one thing, you had two things, you had three things, or you had a whole bunch of things, you know? And it's just then we get into linguistics and whatnot, and like how language influences the way you think, and Sapir-Whorf about this. We're not going to get into that. But like, you know, so like, obviously with a number concept below, like without a number concept beyond 3, you're not really going to be able to do any complex mathematics. However, does that mean Aboriginal Australians are unintelligent? No. Because surviving in the Australian outback for 50,000 years is not an easy thing. Like, there are different cognitive skills that was more beneficial for them to focus on in their culture and in their, like, an Aboriginal Australian can tell you exactly within degrees of accuracy what cardinal direction they're pointed to. So like we haven't really in psychology talked about like the influence of culture on like how our brains work and like how we even conceive of the things that we're talking about in psychology. It's like intelligence, it's like it's not as set in stone as we pretend it is. This is what I'm saying. Anyway, that was not your question. You just got me off on a tangent.
When you explore the criminal mind, will you still explore the criminal mind?
I'm not super interested in it, honestly. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there that I might tackle because there are misconceptions that generally apply to psychology as a whole. But other than that, like, I mean, like, I took forensic psychology. It was really boring. My professor was like, you're not going to be hunting serial killers. That's just not, there's not enough work in the world for you to make that into a job. What you're mostly going to be doing is ensuring that a person is competent to stand trial, which means you just do a psych eval on them and make sure that, and you got to make sure they're not malingering. That's really like the majority of forensic psychology. So.
What memory techniques do you use other than memory palace, and what purpose do you use it for?
I mean, you got other memory techniques that follow basically the same trend. So, like, you've got the journey system, which is basically the mind palace, except like it's not a multi room location. It's just one room. So like that's the basics of a mind palace. And you've got the link system, which is basically where you have a list of things and you imagine them as being like so. Let's say you have a pen. The first item on the list is pencil. Next item on the list is eraser. You would imagine in your head like a pencil combined with an eraser in some crazy way, and then let's say that the next item on the list was a microphone. Okay, so first item was pencil, second item was eraser. Now, you've got pencil mixed with eraser, and then you move on to eraser, like a microphone made out of erasers, and that's your link system. So you combine the items together visually in your mind, and the progression of that allows you to understand the list. Like, that's good for lists and stuff like that, things that are meant to be in order. Then you've got the peg system, which is like you use numbers and you turn those into pegs. So you have a visual mnemonic for each number, and then you tie that to whatever it is you're trying to remember, and that is also good for lists. But it also is good because you don't have to go through the whole list. You can just call out whatever number, and then you can find that specific item without having to go all the way down the list like you would with the link system. So yeah, those are some other visual memory techniques. I mean, like, you use the link system or the journey system for like lists and stuff. Use them. My purposes for using them? Groceries.
What memory techniques do you
That's the same question.
Yeah.
I'm talking so much, so it's really hard to do my mouth right now.
What would your goals be with the channel in the future? What would be your goals with the channel in the future?
What would be my goals with the channel for the future? I would like to not be poor. There's that. I would like to be able to keep my apartment. But other than that, other than making money, I would like for this channel to be, because like there's a lot of STEMmy channels out there, a lot of science channels, but I don't see a lot of like good social science focused channels. Like there's a lot of biology, there's a lot of physics, even some anthropology, but like that's more on the biology side, of the bioanthropology side of things. Like, I don't know. It's just like I feel like there is a need for, not to say that there isn't this out there, but I think there's a need for more social science communication, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there that, because grifters love to peddle psychological misinformation. So, no, I'm done.
How far do you think individual freedom should go with really regressive cultures? Growing up Amish, Mennonite, I don't think those people should keep repressing kids and compare their religious groups.
Yeah, no, I believe that freedom is extremely important. Freedom of the individual, not freedom of an organization. I think that's one of the biggest problems with our society, is that we treat organizations like people more so than we treat people themselves. I don't think that you should be able to create a structure in which you can tell people what to do and punish them with violence of either psychological or physical. So yeah, like I think that there should be more protections for people coming out of cults or coming out of things like that. Like, very much agree.
Plus, how do you bridge that gap with very repressed and undereducated minds to communicate? It's difficult as fuck.
You know, that is a good question, and that's one that I think requires more knowledge than I have. I know that there are social workers who specialize in that sort of thing. So like, you know. Oh my god. It's gone now.
My boyfriend got aphantasia, so every time I try to explain to him my mind how he looks at me with question marks in his eyes. He's got quite a good memory with numbers and math, though. That was just a comment.
Huh. Yeah, I have not talked about aphantasia on this channel very much. But yeah, Now, I imagine that talking to someone with aphantasia about a mind palace would just give them a hernia. It's like, what are you talking about?
Are you a visual thinker or have an inner voice and how to practice visual thinking?
I mean, like, I have both. There is some research that some people favor one versus the other. Like, I definitely favor subvocalizing for, like, reading. But there are obviously some people like who don't have a mind's eye, like people suffering from aphantasia or something like that. But like, I think I use my different cognitive styles just as in general for different things, and I think most people do. Like I hear my inner voice more when I'm thinking about certain things, but I'm also a very imaginative person, so like I can visualize things pretty well too. So like. And I would say that if you want to improve visualization, read more novels, actually.
To the question before that, or they also said it's just so interesting how different our minds work. I really hope that there will be more data in the near future, also regarding AI. It would be so interesting to visualize our thoughts with AI.
Yeah, I think that particular thing is a world away from what we're currently at. And that's just knowing people who research in that field and whatnot. But yeah, like I also am of the mind of like I'm of two minds in this regard. It's like, yeah, people are very, very unique and individual, and like we have a lot of different ways of doing similar things. But at the same time, like I also think people are very similar, and I think sometimes we can get bogged down in one side or the other of like we're super different or we're super similar. It's like I think in many things we're a lot more similar than we are different. But like it's like when we talk about differences in the human species, we're talking about differences of minutia at the end of the day. Like we are all way more similar to each other than any of us are to a lobster.
It's a slow process to create imagery in words. Do you have any tips for becoming faster?
Just do it more. It's just one of those things like everything else, you just gotta do it more. We're up to date? Sick! Alright, well, I do appreciate you all sticking around. I am not happy with this particular drawing. What do you think, Amade? How does it look?
How do you find more memory palaces other than going outside?
I never actually read this study, but I heard about a study that demonstrated that digital locations work just as well as physical locations. So, like, if you have, like, a game map that you know super well, you could use that. Like, digital mind palaces, I think more and more memory experts are using that.
What is the most observant thing in the whole world?
The most observant?
I mean, no, objective.
Objective. I don't like to fetishize objectivity. Like, I think there's an importance to be had in subjectivity. I also think that like when you fetishize objectivity, you run into this trap where you become less objective as a result, because like if you think of yourself as objective, then you will be less likely to check yourself on how objective you are being in a particular situation. Which is kind of paradoxical and counterintuitive, but it's like the dispassionate scientist doesn't exist. We're not dispassionate creatures. We don't do things well because we're not interested in them. if you are interested in something, you're going to want to do that thing, which means that you're going to be invested in that thing, which means you're going to be less than objective. Understanding that can allow you to be more objective by relying on things like the scientific method, methods that are designed to produce the most empirically driven, rational results possible. You know what I mean? But if you just let yourself think that you are above irrationality and think that you're objective, you're actually going to be less objective and more irrational.
And I think this one's to visualizing your thoughts with AI. And this is from Feelings of the Future, and they said, and rewatched dreams after they're forgotten.
That'd be interesting. Like, I don't know. It's hard to tell, like, what is science fiction and what is science when it comes to AI at this point. Like, we're getting a lot of reports from a lot of different areas, some of which are more trustworthy than others. Like, we don't necessarily know how capable any of these things are in particular domains. But, like, you know, we can always imagine it happening because so many things that we couldn't have imagined happening ended up happening in the last 100 years. So, like, you know, I see there's credit to that point, but it's just like one of those things where, like, I have no idea if we're gonna get to that particular point, or if the people who are paying for these things to be developed would even give a shit about doing something fun and interesting like that, as opposed to just, you know, replacing their workforce.
What are some skills that you learned in 1 year?
That I learned this past year? Is that what they're asking?
Maybe that you want to learn that could be learned in 1 year?
I mean, most things? I don't know. Most things and nothing at the same time. It's like, how good do you want to get at something? I don't know. One thing that I would like to revisit and get better at this year for myself would be statistics. I passed statistics, I took statistics, and then I info dumped statistics. And now I'm like reading a bunch of papers and having to like look at their data, and I'm just like, oh fuck, how do I do that? And then so like I just want to like sit down and maybe hire somebody to tutor me in statistics and like force me to relearn it.
Isn't every rational decision or action backed by irrational desires?
Desires can be rational, so not necessarily. Oh, this looks like garbage. Does it look any better on the camera?
Math is quite simple.
Yeah, it is. Moving everything around, guys. Just hold on, bear with me.
What skills that you learned last year?
Oh, past year? I mean, I got better at photography. I got better at cinematography. I've been doing a lot of work things the past year. And, like, I've been doing a lot of photo and video and audio editing and video editing. And that's what I do for a living. So that's what I was getting better at. Huh? Yeah, no, this one's the only one that I've got going right now. We were taking a sidebar. Hey, how's it going? You doing okay? Is it too... I can't see. Is it too up close and personal? Oh my god, it is.
I'm not there yet.
Oh, you're not there. I'm gonna switch it. That was fun. Enjoyed that. Yeah, it's really hard to do the mouth when you're talking and you can't look at your own mouth. All right, I think there's only like one. Do we have any more? Okay. I think there's only one way to end this live stream.
Wait. Are you working on any movie right now?
Huh?
Are you working on any movie right now?
Any movie? I am actually thinking of a screenplay. But I'm not going to say anything about it.
Any ideas on brain farts?
Brain farts?
Brain farts.
Get more sleep, eat better, take a break when you need to take a break.
This is a weird one, but do you think reverse butterfly effect will ever be able to recreate crime? Like just visualize it based on scanning? I heard a rumor that the Ramsey the Ramsey's concreted the basement.
I don't. This is one of those things where I think it's more science fiction than science fact. Like, okay, a deep learning algorithm is only as good as the data you train it on. A person is only as good as the data you train it on. Like, are we going to be able to recreate crime scenes just by, like, doing a 3D scan of it? It's like, I mean, I've worked with, like, 3D scanning technology and stuff like that. There's always technical issues with anything like this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine something like that being easily accessible or reliable anywhere in the near future. Maybe, like, 100 years from now. But who's to say? Anyway.
I think this was to charcoaling your portrait, and it's no, and then upside down turned into black.
I guess there's no better place to end on that. Thank you everybody so much for watching. If you want this, DM me. I'll sell it to you for an exorbitant amount of money.
Oh wait.
No, do we have a question?
Have you practiced it with dual and back? Do you think it works?
No, don't know what that is. Anyway, I hope this cleared up some. You know what? Before I leave, like, let's just have a chat. Let's have a chat.
What do you think about psychology using mental expression?
I want to chat about something different right now. I want to chat about. Oh my God, my hands. Hi. How are you doing? I want to chat about. Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear the words that I'm saying? I am very, very, very disappointed in the turnout of the last video, guys. Like, come on, what happened? What happened? Nobody watched it. It's got just over 1,000 views right now. Like, what is the malfunction? Did I waste 3 months of my life researching a topic only for no one to give a shit? It can't be right, you guys, and did anyone watching right now actually go see the latest video? I know it's a long one. I'm waiting now. Okay, I guess I'll answer those while I wait for an answer to my questions. Hey, I've been watching your content for long, great content. Just curious what you do for a living and, like, where do you live? not gonna tell you where I live. Somewhere in the state of Florida. That's as close as you're gonna get. And what do I do for a living? Oh, I work in multimedia. I do video, audio, photography, editing, production, like all that sort of stuff. Currently, I work for a non-for-profit research institute. Yep. Spartan says he lives in a basement. Yeah, I know. That was a callback. Do you want to see the window? No, you're right. They're just trying to get a beat on where we are. Oh, you guys want to see the cat? Do you think it's possible to increase the capacity of your working memory? I've not come across a study that demonstrates that, but I don't necessarily see why not. You guys are asking a lot of AI questions, and I'm not qualified. I know people who work in AI. I personally am not qualified to talk about it. So did you guys watch the video yet? The one about split brain patients? Did you guys watch that? Did you get her? Do you want me to scoop her? Do you want me to go wash my hands?
Did they want to see her? Or are we just forcing it on them?
Huh?
Do they want to see her, or are we forcing it on them?
What forces it on them? Gib! Hoi! I brought somebody. Her name is Sushi. Can you see her? Hello! Okay, do you want to take her back? I think she's about to kill me.
I don't think so, but yeah, I'll take her. What questions would you ask Sherlock if he was in front of you? I would ask him.
Nice cat.
Sick. I would ask him where he goes shopping for clothes, honestly. He's got quite the wardrobe. Okay, thank you. I'm glad some people have been watching or have watched the video. I have sushi hair in my mouth now. Oh my god, so sushi. It's like her defense mechanism. She just like shoots hairs into your mouth. Oh my, I just flicked and now there's hair everywhere in the Yeah, no thanks. Okay, anyway, this is the end. I think that there's only one natural conclusion to this. So if you want this, you may have it. You can have it. Okay, it's in frame. Yes, if you want this, you can have it. If not, I'll keep it.
R-U-G-E?
Are you GE? I don't know what that means. Maybe. Probably not. I don't know. Alright. Thank you everybody so much for watching. Please stick around for more content. It will be coming soon. And yeah, I'll see you later. Bye.